Jake Crain of the J-Boy Show, kind enough to spend some time with us. Jake, first of all, welcome into the show. Appreciate you spending some time.
Well, Neil, man, I appreciate the invite. Always enjoyed your work, and a lot of crazy storylines going on right now in the world of college football, and it's an exciting time.
Yeah, that's for sure. Let's start with what happened at LSU. Got announced on Sunday that, no surprise, Ed Orgeron's not going to be back in 2022. I guess maybe a little bit of a surprise that he's going to finish the season. He gets a full buyout. There's a lot to dissect there. But I'm more interested in where you think it goes from here. Obviously, this gives Scott Woodward and the people at LSU sort of carte blanche to send some trial balloons out, to test PR a little bit. They don't have to worry about what's going to happen really with the rest of this season. They don't have to worry about Ed Orgeron. He gets his money, and in return, he has to be a good soldier, all that stuff. Where do you think it goes? I'll just start there, and then we'll pick up. What are the names that are sort of at the top of your radar?
Well, when I look at this job, the LSU job is obviously one of the most sought after jobs in the country. You're able to recruit a state. You're the only state school in a state that is wealth of talent. I mean, you go from one side to the other. There's a bunch of great players, and they tend to stay home. But when I look at it, the three names that jump out to me, Lane Kiffin is one. I know the Ole Miss fan base isn't going to like that, but it's really a compliment to you at the end of the day. Now, you don't want to lose Lane Kiffin, but you got Lebby right there. I think Lane Kiffin's probably, to me, the most likely right now. You look at Mario Cristobal, I think he would be the Grand Slam hire, the best hire they could make if they had to just pick one. But the contract situation in Oregon's a little bit interesting. Got to dive into that a little bit more. I'd be more surprised if Mario went as opposed to Lane. And then Mel Tucker, a guy to me that's an SEC guy. He knows the landscape. It's not like he's coming from one place. Brian Harsin came from all the way across the country over here, and hiring Mike Bobo and Derek Mason gave him kind of more of a layout of the land from a recruiting standpoint, high school coach relationship standpoint, structurally and efficiently. But you don't worry about that with a Mel Tucker. You don't worry about that with a Lane Kiffin, and you really still don't worry about that with the Mario Cristobal as well. So I think those are some names to keep an eye on. Jimbo's not leaving A&M. Joe Brady's not leaving the NFL. So I don't think Luke Fickell is going to make that move. I don't think it's a great fit for him. And he's in a situation right now where I don't think he's going to move for a while as they move into the Power 5 rankings. So those are some guys I would look at. But as coaching always goes, coaching searches, it's typically never the first guy you hear.
Everyone does this with Scott Woodward all the time. They say he wants to make a splash hire, and people just immediately go, okay, that means sexy names. It doesn't always necessarily mean it's a sexy name. He's also got some other dynamics that are going on there that make things interesting. He's got all this Title IX stuff that's hanging over the program. There's still some NCAA stuff that's potentially hanging over the program, though I don't know that the NCAA has any teeth at this point. I don't know that their bite can hurt you anymore. The part about Kiffin, how much is that just splash because, God, he's such a social media presence? How much of that is substance where, hey, they look at him and they say, this is a guy that if he had the resources at LSU that he would have, that he could be unstoppable. I mean, what's kind of the mindset down there as it pertains to Kiffin, to the best of your knowledge?
Well, the thing about Lane is he's an instant solve to one side of the ball. You're never going to have to worry about offense with Lane Kiffin. I mean, even a guy like Dan Mullen, I don't mean to digress, but you look at Florida, offense really isn't the problem. And it's an instant solve. We know the type of athletes that LSU has. We've seen him kind of in that up-tempo, spread it out wide style of play that Lane likes. He'll always stay with a really good quarterback. He's able to develop quarterbacks. And he can test defenses at all three levels, on the defensive line, in the middle, in the exterior, and in the back end. And the thing I think when you look at the social media standpoint, Lane is kind of ahead of the curve in that. If you notice, there's a lot more younger head coaches now than there's ever been before. A lot of them are offensive minds, and a lot of them are from the same tree. And you look at society today and recruiting today with NIL and the transfer portal and this, that, and the other. No longer is it I can kind of hide behind in the back room and come in every now and then. I mean, hell, Neil, you even got Nick Saban going on the Manning cast and stuff like that. So Lane is kind of ahead of the curve there. When you look at kind of the structural parts around Lane, his offense isn't, some people confuse this. They think his offense is similar to Mike Leach's. Are it similar to a Josh Heupel's where you're just going at an absolute insane pace? It's not. It's actually somewhat balanced, and it's a lot easier to be a defensive coordinator for a coach like Lane Kiffin running that system than it is for a Josh Heupel. Than it is, when you look around at some of these other fast-paced, up-tempo, warp speed style offenses. So while a lot of people like Lane from afar, when he's your guy, you'll always be relevant. He'll make it fun again on offense. LSU will be hitting big plays. And I like the fit. I think about a Lane Kiffin at an LSU or a Florida, at a place like that kind of recruits itself. And then you see what he's able to bring the assistant coaches that want to coach for a guy like Lane Kiffin. To me, I don't see it being as big of a hindrance with the Title IX stuff and going. Because again, when's the last time we heard about something bad Lane Kiffin doing off the field? He's got a pretty bad rep for really not doing a ton, especially, look at Ed Orgeron compared to Lane Kiffin. We can compare those off the field things too.
So if you're Ole Miss, you're sitting here in the middle of October, you're 5-1 at the turn. You have a quarterback who's at the very top of the Heisman race midway through the season. If you're Ole Miss and you say, we don't want to run the risk of Lane Kiffin walking, do you try to do something to step in and make a deal where you get his name off the table, or is that even possible?
Yeah, Neil, I don't know how much Ole Miss can really do about it when it comes down to it, if you're going to compare money at LSU and Ole Miss. And I don't mean to sound crass or that Ole Miss isn't as important as another school, but if Lane wants to go, if he's going to take that step, I think he's going to take it regardless. But if you're Ole Miss, why not try? But there's a caveat here. It's not like the cupboard is bare at Ole Miss. Jeff Lebby is waiting in the wings. If Lane were to leave, to me, he's got to be the guy you go to. And there's a relationship there and a familiarity there that Jeff Lebby's very well respected in the coaching profession. Now, will Ole Miss reach out and try and do something? I'm sure they will. Is it a guarantee that Lane Kiffin's going to go to LSU? No. He may be just as comfortable as he can possibly be at Ole Miss and really overachieving already with what he's been able to do there. And you have Matt Corral, and I understand that. But if I'm an Ole Miss fan, I want the administration to reach out and do everything they can. Does that mean he's going to stay regardless? No, but you do have Jeff Lebby waiting in the wings.
How do you see the second half of Ole Miss's season playing out? They've got LSU this weekend at Auburn. They get Liberty and then Texas A&M at home, Vanderbilt at home, at Mississippi State. Certainly the back half not quite as just stacked as the front half was, but there are plenty of challenges in it starting this weekend with LSU coming to town.
Yeah, well, the biggest question to me for Ole Miss has never been the offense. I know they struggled a little bit at Alabama early in the first half. But as defensively, how healthy are they? Chance Campbell was a guy that went down. He got up and went out. They're a little bit beat up. You're playing against an LSU team that's coming off a game and where they decided to finally run gap scheme, which is what they're best at. And Florida decided never to spill it. They boxed everything the whole game, and LSU just ran it down their throats. So it's a scary game. And anytime you play an LSU team, and you know this, Neil, they have athletes. They're always going to have good players. And if you're Ole Miss, to me, it's always a race to 4 stops and a turnover every week you play, regardless of who you're playing. Because offensively, with the Ricks out, with Stingley out, Major Burns beat up, Ollie Gay, their best pass rusher out, Ole Miss is going to be able to put up points. I think the over-under 76.5 right now. But the question for me with Ole Miss is, and I use the NCAA basketball tournament analogy, the teams that have more success in the NCAA basketball tournament are the ones that can win multiple ways. And you're basically in bracket style play now. If you're Ole Miss, if you want to do what you set out to do, you got to win out. You got to win the rest of your games. And at that point, but I wonder if Ole Miss can win outside of one way, and that's in a track meet and trying to outscore people. Because while that defense is better, when they're playing against offenses that are relevant up front, that have threats on the outside, you look at an Auburn team that's gotten hot. You look down the stretch here, as you mentioned, if Ole Miss can continue to produce at a high level offensively, they'll be in every game. But it comes down to how many stops they can get. That's going to be kind of the answer. And there's always that 1 or 2 games that the offense isn't hitting on all cylinders like it normally is. Those are the ones you got to survive.
What have your impressions been of Matt Corral? How realistic is a Heisman for Matt Corral this year?
Well, I think he's the leader right now. You watch the guy play. From a pass game standpoint, he had a lot of drops Saturday, especially early in the game. He put some balls on the money down the field. So what does he do? He just decides, hey, I'm going to run for 200 yards. And to me, this year, if there was ever a year where a guy like Matt Corral was going to win it, this is the type year that it needed to happen. You look back in the past, RG3 won the Heisman with 3 losses. I believe they went 9-3, 8-3, something like that. So there's precedent there to me, he's the best player in college football, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I can make an argument for Jordan Davis and the way he changes the game. But Matt does a little bit of everything, whether it's throwing off platform, whether it's putting touch, throwing the changeup, as we call it, whether it's the vertical ball, whether it's throwing the whole shot. He's the total package. To me, he's the best player in college football. And if he keeps operating at this pace and finding other ways to continue to move the ball, because again, Neil, they don't have the weapons they had last year. You don't have a Boa. Mingo's hurt. Elijah Moore's playing for the Jets. Braylon Sanders is a good player and an upper-level SEC wide receiver, but Drummond's come on a little bit. Lane's done a good job with the modified runs to the running back, kind of the short stuff. So I think Matt right now is on pace to win it.
If you had to look into your crystal ball at the transfer portal quarterbacks, because it looks like Ole Miss is going to have to get into that portal, there's some names that stick out that you kind of have an eye on right now?
Well, the first one obviously that pops to your mind is Spencer Rattler. If anybody could get that right, it would be Lane Kiffin. I actually don't think it would be a horrible fit with the style that Lane runs and really kind of the persona that he has and the perception that he has, and he lets his quarterbacks kind of be themselves. So that'd be one that would jump out. But there's always somebody that kind of comes out of it. You look at Will Levis transferring from Penn State. Sean Clifford's been good. He's been fantastic at Kentucky, and more names will pop up as the season goes on. You wonder about some of these other guys as well. I'm very interested to see kind of what happens on the West Coast with some of these quarterbacks. We've seen an influx of West Coast quarterbacks coming to the SEC, whether it be through high school, whether it be through the transfer portal. And Lane obviously has connections out there. So Spencer Rattler's a guy to keep an eye on. I still think Altmaier's got a chance to be a really good player. He just needs time, and coming in the position he came in the other night is asking a little bit too much out of the freshman. And they had an easy call for him. So we'll see as it goes. But like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if Spencer Rattler's at Ole Miss.
All right, last thing, and we'll stick with quarterbacks and end here. I was interested in your answer to this yesterday when you and I were chatting. So Eli Manning's having his jersey retired at Ole Miss this weekend, which means that the whole Manning clan will be here, obviously, including Arch Manning, who's coming in on his visit for the Ole Miss LSU game. A lot of talk out there about Texas, where he was last weekend. A lot of talk about Georgia, where he was earlier in the year. You think somebody else leads for Arch Manning at this point?
Well, look, I've seen this movie so many times. To me, it's Bama until it's not. That's the way I look at it. Nick Saban's obviously made it a top priority, made it known that he's not going anywhere. The main reason he went on the Manning cast, in my opinion, was for Arch Manning. And these are the battles that Nick Saban loves, where, it feels like everybody's on an even playing field. Georgia's really hot. This is a true battle. And to me, it's just hard for me to err outside of Nick Saban early. Now, does that mean he'll necessarily go there? No. But when Nick Saban makes somebody a priority, whether it's a defensive end, whether it's a corner, whether it's a wide receiver, whether it's a guard, center, running back, or quarterback in this case, he hits at a pretty high rate. So to me, it's Alabama until it's not.
My people will get mad if I don't ask this question. What chance do you give Ole Miss in that race? And what has to happen this weekend for Ole Miss to become a bigger factor?
Yeah. Well, he's going to enjoy his visit. It's not like Arch Manning doesn't know about Oxford and kind of how it goes down there. But to me, I think Matt Corral winning the Heisman would be huge, just to show that, it can be done there. And we know that Eli played there and we know that Archie played there. But recruiting nowadays is different than it used to be. The whole, well, I grew up here and my dad went here and my granddad went here, so I'm going to go here. Those days, they're over. Now you have NIL and stuff like that. Very few will go the path that I just mentioned. So it does make it harder for Ole Miss. But if Matt Corral can keep operating like this, and look, if Lane goes to LSU, I still think Ole Miss has as good as a shot as ever to get Arch Manning if they name Jeff Lebby the coach. That's just me. But, when I look at it, anytime you can win the Heisman and say, listen, I told you, look at where Matt Corral got drafted. Look at what he just won. You have the ability to reach the highest ceiling you can reach here. And that's all a recruit can ask for.
Jake, as always, I appreciate your time very much. Hope to stay in touch with you.
Neil, I appreciate it, buddy. Really enjoy your work. Always have. It's an honor to come on, my brother, and you just let me know whenever.
Thank you, my man. Appreciate you.
All right. Holla.